Coming up on Man Enough.
What happened to me with Apu was that got pointed out to me. You're a well-intentioned character that was very funny and made a lot of people laugh and won you Emmys and helped create an iconic, wonderful television show that had unintended negative consequences. And the fact that I was oblivious to it only underlined how much I needed to look at.
Right.
Am I going to keep doing this voice or not? It wasn't so apparent to me what to do, especially when I was so defensive at first.
How could we not see race when it's there? I think it's because we also chose to not look in the direction where the light was.
The more damning about it, I was benefiting.
Right.
So why would I bother to?
That's it.
Being man enough, what does that mean?
It's really manly to mess up, admit you're wrong, and then grow.
I couldn't accept that I was evil. So maybe I'm broken, but those broken things could be corrected.
Intimacy between a father and a son is me just wanting to put my head in your lap.
I love you, son.
You haven't called me benevolent sexist, but my experience is women are better.
Even if it's a positive, it's still not equality.
I don't blame men for that. I just blame the system.
This
Is
Man enough.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Man Enough podcast. I'm Jamie Heath.
I'm Liz Plank.
We're missing Justin Baldoni today. As many of you know already, he's taking a little break. He's in the edit room, but he sends his love.
Yes.
And all that. What are you doing in pink?
I went to Disneyland
Yep.
for the first time in my life on Sunday, and I dressed up all in pink as kind of like Barbie theme because that's just how I dress now.
Yep.
And there was a little 5-year-old girl who was dressed up as a Disney princess, and she came up to me at the parade and she was like, "Are you Barbie?" And I was like, "Yes. Yes, I am." And she was just like, "Wow, I got to be Barbie." So that made my entire year.
I know that
So I'm
you are
just
loving
waiting
it.
for more people to ask me if I'm Barbie.
I'm going to start referring to you as Barbie from now on.
Perfect.
Okay, Barbie.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. And again, we want you to know that you can actually watch this episode
Where?
on YouTube for
Okay.
free and see our beautiful faces and
So
see
type
what we're
in Man
wearing.
Enough, search for it, manenough.com.
Yes, Man Enough. There's an amazing channel with all our episodes.
All right, Barbie. So we, of course, sometimes talk amongst ourselves. We have different guests on. Sometimes we have guests that are super special.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have guests on that are like just grand
Yes.
in personality, do great work, also have a great work in life in terms of social issues and things of that nature. We have somebody on
We really
today
do.
that I think most people are going to be excited
Really
to see.
excited. I'm excited.
Who is that?
We have Hank Azaria.
Whoa!
A renowned actor, comedian, and voice artist. His iconic career includes roles such as Mo Cieslak and formerly Apu on The Simpsons, which we're going to really dig into. It earned him many Emmy Awards for voice acting. And beyond acting, he's also the co-founder of Soul Focused Group, which is an amazing organization that he started and a consulting company that works with leaders across the world to shed their inner biases to create more equal workspaces. So I can't think of a more perfect person to really dig into so many great conversations with today.
Let's
'cause
welcome him
We love
on.
it.
Hey.
Hi, Hank.
Hello. Thank you for that nice intro.
Man,
all
we
true.
are thrilled that you are here. We are fans. I can't imagine anyone who doesn't see your face and go like, oh my gosh, this guy's been in this, he's done this, we know his voice from this and this and this. You've done so much work and you've been successful for so long. And not only have you just kept it for yourself, but you've done good work in the world. And you've
Yeah.
also acknowledged about your own evolution of how you see the world and how you see masculinity. So we're super excited that you're with us today. Thank you.
I'm very glad to be here. I appreciate the work you guys do a lot. I'm a fan of the show, and I was excited to talk about this stuff with you all today.
Tell us really quickly why. Why are you excited to talk about this stuff, whether it be with us or with anyone?
Well, I'm excited to talk about it in general to anybody who will, which isn't everyone. You folks do such deep dives and and you really get in there, which this topic needs. Probably all topics need. But it's hard to have this conversation without the gray area, without a lot of nuance, a lot of depth, a lot of acknowledging of imperfection and mistakes and the feelings that go along with that. So, I feel like I'm in the right place to have this conversation.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Well, Liz, we normally start our show off with a question that we ask our guest. What is that question, Liz?
That question is, when is the last time that you didn't feel enough?
I knew you were going to ask this. So I've thought about it. I mean, I could give you a cheating answer. Well, the real overwhelming last time I felt I wasn't enough with a capital E
Mm.
was around all this Apu stuff. I mean, I don't know that that's the exact last time. But I would say the last time I felt I was not enough, what my son's 14, and occasionally 14-year-olds present challenges that I just get like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know. I'm afraid of misstepping. And especially when he gets emotional and upset, I feel like I'm not enough. I feel like, oh man,
Mm.
I wish I were better equipped to deal with this right now. I
Wow.
don't know what to say or not to say. I don't know whether to, draw a boundary or put an arm around him or not touch him or say, offer my own experience or
Mm.
leave it be. Those are the moments I feel really profoundly. In fact, it was on the tennis court. My son's a very, very good tennis player. He's aspiring to go as far as he can with it. And he decided to take this summer and really devote to it. First time really seriously. And he had a wrist injury a couple weeks ago. And he was just coming back from it. And his coach is also my teacher, which is fun that we share. We have the same kind of tennis teacher. Around the court getting kind of a joint lesson. And I could tell he was getting real frustrated because his wrist wasn't hitting the ball the way he was a week or two before. And coach walked away and he said to me, Dad, I think I'm getting burnt out on tennis. I really felt like not enough in that moment. I was like, I don't know how to address this. Is larger than just tennis. I don't know what to do with this moment. I said, the hardest part about anything is coming back that first time or two. Shaking the rust off is always difficult. I know I feel that in my professional life, even when just working out, if I have to take a week off, coming back is the hardest part. And I could see it didn't help at all, whatever I said. And coach walked over and I said, okay, tell coach how you're feeling. And he did with tears in his eyes. And coach said, okay, Dad, goodbye. And so I walked off and I went and worked out at the tennis facility while they were finishing up on the court. And he came out, and he went, I feel good. Brian fixed what was going on with my wrist, with my swing, and how I was overcompensating. And, and it was a big deal because I was watching something happen that could have gone. Look, and I'm okay if he wants to quit tennis or he changes his mind about tennis, whatever it is. But I just didn't know what to do in that moment. And I was glad there was someone there who did.
I think what that speaks to, actually, which I'm impressed with, is oftentimes in my past, I may have thought that I had the tools and all the skills to deal with something. I don't know if that's because of my ego and masculinity and, and I don't want another man directing my child. But the fact that you can then say, you know what, actually someone else may be able to deal with this better than I can deal with it, whether it be because they are the coach or their teacher or a friend or another family member, whatever it is, the fact that you can also feel that you're still enough or that you're not less of a parent because somebody else can also help.
Of course.
Is, I think more men can do that. More fathers can do that because there are other uncles out there, coaches or whatever we call them, that can contribute to our kids.
And also, I left out a detail. What was funny was when he told coach said verbatim almost what I said. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm sure you've noticed this, right? As a parent, you can say a thing, but that's why you need that's why you need the coach or the teacher or the friendly uncle or the friend, because it's coming from you. It just doesn't. It just sounds like the same voice that tells them to pick up their socks and put the dish away, and they start to tune it out.
That's why. That's why I have some friends sometimes when I want to say something to one of my kids.
Yes.
I'll be like, call my uncle or my friend and be like, Juan, call Knack. Can you tell him such and such? And then he'll receive it.
You're right. Even though
exactly. Because I've spent a lot of my capital on stuff I think he should do.
You're listening to the Man Enough podcast. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back to the Man Enough podcast. So, hey, let me ask you that in the world, there's a lot of different types, right? There's the macho man that is full of armor.
That's out. That one's out.
That one's out. Okay. Just the,
That's not me. Yeah.
or there's men that are championing equality of different genders. And I believe that the world is completely imbalanced, like there's two wings of a bird, and the one wing that is male is overworked, and then the other wing, which represents females, has not been allowed to fully reach its full potential. So we have this bird flying throughout the world, completely imbalanced. And I think that one wing has to help the other wing fly differently, or right, develop differently, so that we can flip and do things right. So I'm curious, there's a lot of men that do not fully embrace this idea that this world is imbalanced. Where do you stand on this? How do you see yourself? Maybe where you were when you were a teenager compared to where you were as a young man and where you are now?
What you're describing was a real blind spot for me for a long time. I've thought more about this in terms of race in the last 8 or 10 years than in terms of gender issues, because that's what was thrust upon me. Post Me Too, my eyes were opened a lot. In fact, I made note like, I have blind spots here too that I was not aware of, because I was sort of more ahead of the curve than some of my white brothers and sisters because of my experience of the last 10 years. But I was not in terms of, for lack of a better term, Me Too or the issues you were just
gender.
describing.
What are some of those blind spots that what are things that you grew around?
Never considering the pressure women feel in the workplace, especially.
You had never really considered that, is what you're saying.
No.
Not right.
I always was respectful of women in the workplace more selfishly, like meaning I don't want to, I don't want to have any drama at work, so I'm not going to, for the most part, I'm not going to date there or have too much interpersonal stuff going on. But I just looked at it more as it's just not a good idea for anybody. I didn't really consider how women could really are often put in compromising situations. If they're asked out at work, that's a tremendous dilemma. Like, oh, now what? Now, even if they're asked out respectfully at work, it's like, now how I answer this has tremendous effect on my career, on my comfort here. I had not thought about that too much before Me Too. And because I'm in a work environment with so many, I guess we all are, but, sets, and there's so many dynamics, gender dynamics.
But what about even like being raised in the world, as you were in college or as in high school, how you treated women, how you saw them? Did you see them as objects? Of course, that's maybe too strong, because I'm sure you were well advanced enough to not see them as such. But in your actions, do you feel like you were one that those around you would have said, oh, he actually sees women as being an amazing equal gender, treats them as such, is helpful, doesn't expect them to serve him, things of that nature? How did you demonstrate that?
Yes and no.
Okay, good.
I had an innate respect for women. I was raised in a house that was very female dominated. My dad was a workaholic, so wasn't around much.
Yeah.
I have 2 older sisters and a mom. My mom passed away last year, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
they're a lot older than I was, 10 and 12 years older than I am. So, I often jokingly say I was raised by, 3 Jewish mothers. So it's amazing that I'm still standing here. And I had very good rapport with them and saw them as people, and a lot of respect for them. On the other hand, I'm a product of my time. I think, meaning, I look at movies and TV shows that I was raised, and I was really raised by the television and by movies. And even movies from like 5 years ago, I can't believe what I'm seeing.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, of course my generation ended up like this, with this kind of womanizing James Bond, objectification of women, conquests, sexual and romantic conquests. And I mean, even the charming guys in comedy, I mean, you look at even like Ghostbusters, for example, okay? which you wouldn't think of as like a particularly sexist film. I don't think you would.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I was watching that recently, and it's like Bill Murray was one of my heroes, still is. But you look at that movie, and Sigourney Weaver's just been seriously traumatized by like a beast monster ghost in her house. She's really freaked out. And Bill Murray comes over, doesn't know her, with a fake instrument, a pretext to get in her apartment. He's supposed to be checking the place out to make sure she's okay. And he's relentlessly hitting on her. I mean, relentlessly hitting on her. And it's really cringeworthy. It's like, whoa. And because he's funny and he's Bill Murray, we all go, oh, it's. And that was really the message I got from every hero of mine on film and TV is, oh no, you hit on women.
Yeah.
And as long as it's like semi funny and charming, it's great.
Yeah.
And, you try to have the conquest, you know what I mean? Highly encouraged. I'm a product of that.
Yes.
Sure.
And I
Me
love
too.
that you're acknowledging that, because you're not making this an individual, right, failing. You're really pointing out the culture that all of us were raised into. And that's one of the reasons not to make everything about Barbie. But I was in the movie theater, and one of the things that made me really emotional was seeing 13, 14-year-old girls watching this movie. When I was 13 and 14, it was American Pie. Dude, Where's My Car was my favorite movie, where Jennifer Garner's boobs, again, like grow when she's wearing this necklace, right? The entire premise, and to your point, Hank, it's men are just want women for sex, right? And we came up with this Bechdel test where in a movie, if two women talk to each other about anything else than a man, it passes the test. That is such a low bar. And many films today that are made still don't like Oppenheimer doesn't pass the Bechdel test. So I think it's really crucial, and I think it's disarming for us to talk about the messages that we were fed, as opposed to making the sexism and even racism, right, these sort of personal failings. Yes, we can take individual responsibility, but if we acknowledge the way that the culture plays into it, that is where, change can really happen. And so I'm excited, to see this shift about, again, I'm thinking if I was 13 and I watched Barbie instead of American Pie, how differently would I view myself? How differently would I view the world? And that's just one movie, right? That's just one thing. And that message being repeated in all these different ways really, wires your brain. And so I feel for men who are trying to unlearn these things. I think it's hard, right? When it's been really programmed into you. I would love to, when we asked you the last time you didn't feel enough, you really referenced this moment around your character in The Simpsons, Apu, and there was this big controversy that started brewing. Hari Kondabolu did a documentary about this, The Problem with Apu. If you want to check it out, it's a really good film. And sort of, drawing attention to the fact that this was a voice that was played by you and not an Indian American, and that this was a very stereotypical character. So I would love for you to sort of tell us about what your journey was with getting that criticism, which I believe at first you in a New York Times interview, you described that you were feeling kind of defensive around it, and you had sort of trouble at the beginning, but then to the point where you're at now, where you've created an organization devoted to helping people unlearn these biases. Can you, take us through what that was, for you at the time?
Well, it's really connected to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
As far as how I was socialized, how I was acculturated. In our group, in the Self-Focus group, in the Human Solidarity Project, we call it the groundwater, the concept of the groundwater. It's what's just seeping in to the unconscious, and we're raised in it from 0 to 7.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a recovery guy. I'm a sober guy. I've been in Al-Anon recovery, which is friends and family of alcoholics and drug addicts, for about 25 years. I got sober myself 17 years ago. Therein lies a tale about how I got onto myself after about 8 years of recovery. That model of, things are going really wrong, like big problems, like really bad, like life-threateningly bad. Brene Brown talks about the difference between shame and guilt a lot. Whereas shame is, I'm bad. I don't deserve to be here. I'm an awful person. If I've misstepped with women, I'm a sexist jerk. If I misstep racially. I'm a racist, as opposed to, I have blind spots. I was raised a certain way. I'm a well-intentioned person. I've heard you guys talk about it, and we talk about it a lot, intent versus impact, intent versus actual impact. So my intentions could have been very good. I just didn't have enough good information, didn't have the right perspective, didn't have the right context. And that certainly goes with women, as far as I was concerned, and definitely around race. So what happened to me with Apu was that got pointed out to me. It's like, your well-intentioned character that was very funny and made a lot of people laugh and won you Emmys and helped create an iconic, wonderful television show had, and all those things are true about it, but it had some blind spots baked into it in its groundwater that came through me and the writers and the creators that had unintended negative consequences. And the fact that I was oblivious to it only underlined how much I needed to look at.
Right.
Wow.
That became the message to me because, so as you say, yes, I got very defensive and upset at first. I was like, well, where does this end? And I hear now a lot of people say it today. They say it to me. Isn't this all silly? It's gone too far. What an overreaction. Where does this end? Can you not do an Irish accent? Can you not do a Polish accent? You're not a policeman. How come you can play Police Chief Wiggum? I mean, where does this nonsense end? Kind of thing. And that was my first, second, and third reaction. Like, I'm a character actor. I do voices. What do you want from me? To me, it's just another thing I'm imitating. I don't see the difference between my imitating an Indian person or a Black person. I'm imitating a French person or, a German person. So learning that difference became important to me. And here's where it connects to program and recovery. That was my model because I had gotten sober and gone through the Al-Anon program and a few other programs too. It always goes the same way. You come out of denial in some way about something, right? Whether it's your own alcoholism, your blind spots around race or gender or sex, your own food addiction. I've been there, whatever, you name it. And then you come out of denial, you look at your part first. Well, what's going on here with me? What am I doing here? And even if in the end you decide, well, my part of this, I think, is only 10% maybe of the whole thing. I think somebody else is maybe 90% of this, but you can only really work on your end. So you try to clean up that 10%, if that's what it is.
Jamie says that all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, he's right.
Yeah.
And then you work steps 4 through 9 in the program. Step 4 is, that inventory. What am I doing here? Who am I? Where was I at fault? Where am I to blame? What's my part? How am I accountable? And step 9 is amends. Now, how do I make this right? How do I make up for it? Sometimes that can be 20 minutes. Sometimes it can take you years to work through that. I had the professional and personal real dilemma, kind of feet to my fire dilemma. Am I going to keep doing this voice or not? It wasn't so apparent to me what to do, especially when I was so defensive at first. Because on the one hand, I didn't want to just bow to what we called then PC pressure. Now there are other words for it, right? I didn't want to fold to the woke mob or give in to cancel culture, whatever we want to call it. I didn't, but more to the point, I didn't want to just, for appearance's sake, fold because, I was afraid of criticism or looking like a bad guy. On the other hand, I certainly didn't want to continue to do harm and perpetuate a stereotype and hurt people and marginalize people. I really didn't know. And partly why I didn't do Hari's documentary is because I wouldn't have felt safe having that conversation privately, let alone with cameras rolling. I just was afraid. I didn't want to. I was sure I'd misstep. I was sure I would say things that would end up publicly hurting me and hurting others. I didn't know what to say. I was still learning. But because of, again, program, I knew that that's okay. I need to keep my mouth shut and my ears open now and go learn about things. So I started going to seminars and started reading and started talking to people. And these are conversations, boy, I had never had before. I don't think I'd ever had a conversation about race with anybody before.
Wow.
Except, in college in a class,
Yeah.
Right.
where I was mostly just taking it in as an intellectual exercise.
Right.
And then that started striking me as part of my, we don't love the term white privilege, not because it isn't accurate, but because it tends to trigger white people. Triggered me at first. And it creates too easy an out. White privilege. I'm not privileged. I didn't grow up with any silver spoon in my mouth. That's not what the term means. We prefer relative advantages. But I realized one of the main relative advantages or privileges I enjoyed around with is never having to think about that stuff. Never, ever once. Didn't impact me. It's why I didn't take a pause when I did the voice of Apu or others, because it didn't occur to me that there would be any kind of impact beyond either a laugh or not a laugh, a successful show or not a successful show. And as I started getting more of a picture, which was a multi-step, there were many key moments of it along the way as the coin started to drop on what reality was here. I started being more able to make the decision. And a lot of my message is go through that journey. And if you want to come to me for help on my organization, we're here. Well, we're a very safe place to have this conversation. But at least have the information, know the real history of the United States, the 1619 version of the history of the United States, know about the groundwater, as I mentioned before, know how you might have been socialized and acculturated to have real blind spots around all this. And then once you know that, then you can make your own decision about the voice you want to do or the joke you want to make or the script you want to write or how you do it. So I mentored many, many seminars. And one of them was at the People's Institute, which has been doing this kind of seminar for years. And my facilitators, one was Dustin Washington, who you guys are going to talk to in a bit. You folks are going to talk to in a bit. Pardon me. Shouldn't say guys.
I say guys all the time, by the way.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it. But that one I try to be mindful of that
hard.
one. But
It's hard.
That's stuck in there, that
it's
one.
old. Yeah.
But their approach was so compassionate and loving that I was really drawn to Dustin and to Bonnie, who were my leaders. And they ended up breaking off not long after that and forming the Soul Focus Group. I joined them and we created the nonprofit and called the Human Solidarity Project, but that's just semantics. So anyway, their approach was so loving and inclusive while being no less truth-telling. It mattered to me a lot because in some of these seminars, I got a lot out of all of them, but sometimes I got kind of targeted. I was like a rich, white, famous guy, and I'd get kind of beat up a bit in these conversations. And maybe rightly so. I'm sure I misstepped. I'm sure I made mistakes. I'm sure I said the wrong thing or asked insensitive questions or whatever it is I did. But I really was trying to learn, and I appreciated their loving approach. And I felt like a lot of other white people would too. And that's why I wanted to amplify them and join them.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I have a few responses, not even responses, but a few thoughts to share. Hank, I say this lovingly. There's about 5 minutes there where you shared some thoughts where we didn't interject much. Oftentimes on the podcast, people can be long-winded. They can share something, and then Liz and I have to interject and keep it. I think that segment right there demonstrates, maybe more than any other guest we've had, what a man is. What a fucking man is. Let me tell you why. Because I had chills while you did. What I heard the whole time was accountability. Here you point any fingers. What I heard is you acknowledge what it required for change, that you were not ready for change in the beginning. I heard you mention program, which I too am part of, which I would have known had you not said that because of how accountable you are. Your desire to look under the hood so that you could then be better, so that society could be better, so you don't repeat the same patterns. Like this is why there are so many people that I know that have been, maybe not in my inner circle, but at least in my outer circle, that are good, decent people who will not look under the hood because of defensiveness, because of ego, and will acknowledge they had blind spots, but not give a shit to then see it differently. It's one thing if there's a hole in the ground and you keep tripping on it because you don't see the hole, all right, I could be forgiving of that. But if you tell me I see the hole now, but now you're not making any efforts to walk around it, I mean, now you've lost me.
Right.
And I feel like we do that a lot. So I feel what you are doing, I know for sure your son will be like yourself, but in a way better version of you because he has you to demonstrate that very thing you just did for the last 5 minutes. Your son, boys, other people see that and see a confident man, successful, white, privileged. I like the other term you used, which was relative advantage.
Advantage.
But like, there it is. There was nothing weak about it. It was strength. It was like, that dude is super confident and acknowledged where some change could be done. So I really appreciate you sharing in the way that you did. Thank you for doing so.
Thank you. It's high praise indeed. You know, I've heard you talk about, I was listening to your segment with Emmanuel Acho, and you were talking about, I've lost my thought, but some of these same issues. And yes, the ability to, look at what your part was.
Yeah.
And then share it. And you're right. I mean, you know, my son's already a lot more emotionally mature than I am. And
of course he is. Of course he is.
I think my wife's in one of us as well, Jamie.
Yeah.
And we really try to practice the principles with him. And we're already struck by how much more emotionally mature he is, certainly when we were that age. I often joke with my wife, gosh, I wish we got to raise me. Things would have been different. But I really appreciate that.
You're listening to the Man Enough Podcast. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back to the Man Enough Podcast. You know, I'm interested to know your son, Hal, who's 14. Someone had said to me, Jamie, you believe in change. Okay. You believe in being different. You believe in equality of all people. You say you're about this. If your kids, your own kids, are not leaders in this area, I don't necessarily mean that's a profession, but if their friends are not better because of your kids, then what the fuck are you doing? Then stop claiming this stuff. So I'm curious, and that I want to put the pressure on my son who's 20 now and my other one that's 7. I don't want to put that pressure on them. But I think it's just in as you said, the groundwater. How do you see your 14-year-old Hal out in the world? Of course, you're proud of him. Of course, he was crying in public at a tennis lesson. I think that's great. I would have never cried at 14 years old in front of my coach. That would have shown weakness. So the fact that he was comfortable doing that is one demonstration there. But what would you say about your son that you think is different about how you were at 14 and how he is now out in the world?
I remember what I was going to say. And part of what continued me on this journey and motivated me with this to approach this APU stuff thoughtfully, with accountability and programmatically, as we like to say, is what am I going to say to him? What am I going to say to him? I have to look him in the eye. He's going to be old enough, which he kind of is now, to understand this one day. He was like 4 when it all started. But so that was important to me, number one. And the other thing I want to say that reminded me of the Acho conversation you had is Mahdi, one of the guys you work with, he says, people don't grow in front of you. You said a very similar thing. You plant seeds and you let them digest it. And that's a lot of how these fellows work as well. With Hal, this around drinking, around gender issues, around emotion,
race.
Absolutely, race. My greatest friend is a parent. My sponsor actually said this to me. He had 2 boys. Your biggest friend as a parent is step 10. Step 10 is you take this daily inventory and you make amends for what you need to do. And a lot of my trip as a parent at first was, I got to do this perfectly. I got to do it right. I got to get right. I would misstep and I would project, into his future of him being an alcoholic lying in the gutter when he was 25 because of how I screwed up today, And I got the lesson. I got told, it's actually better to screw up, own it, and apologize and make amends to him over it and do better than it is to never screw up in the first place. Because if you never screw up in the first place, what message are you sending then? Like, you have to be perfect all the time?
Right.
So, and there's been many, many times, I think this answers your question. And I think the thing I'm most proud of as a father, and what I want to impart to him the most is that I'll come to him. I just did the other day. I nagged him. Remember, I got a but, and it was like the third time that it got said to him that night by me and his mother. And he just looked at me like, oh God, he just gave me that teenage look. The next day I said, you know what? I went too far there. I succumbed. Your mom was a little nervous. I could tell she was in that kind of mood she gets but we didn't need to take that to you. I didn't need to. You need to hear the third time that night. And I'm really trying not to do that again. And if I can tell mom's in that mood, I'll deal with it with mom, not with you. That wasn't the greatest by me. And, I don't even think that stayed with him and bothered him. But the times I've done that, the image I have is I can see his shoulders lower. Like, I can just see like I've just removed the fact that, because growing up in the house I grew up in, which was highly dysfunctional, anything my mom or dad did or didn't do was never as bad to me as never owning it. Never saying, dad screwed up.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Right.
Mom was rough there. She shouldn't have been. Never, not one time did I ever get that. And that would have made a big difference to me.
Wow.
So I think that more than anything else is what
Beautiful.
I want to send him out in the world with,
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm also in a 12-step program, so I love that you're bringing this, as including this in the conversation. And I was just listening to you talk, about the steps, and even the first step of recovery is actually admitting that you're helpless, right? And we don't do that with these issues, right? I think that, again, it's you're doing this, right? You're being racist, you're being sexist. And I see the way that, I think a lot of young boys, I'm curious if your son is sort of affected by this. I think a lot of boys are growing up feeling like they're the problem and feeling like they're responsible for something that they didn't really do, right? Because they didn't create the world that we live in. They certainly live in it and to a certain extent, benefit from it. But I'm curious, and your point about accountability is so good, right? So how do we talk to young men about not feeling responsible, but being accountable, right? You're not responsible for having built the sexist world that we live in, but you're accountable to trying to change it. Because that's there's a subtlety there, right?
Well, just Hank, I'm interested in what you'd say, but can I just say one thing about it?
Yeah.
Because I agree with everything you said. There's one thing I would change when I say it. Yeah, I don't like to say to boys that you're not responsible for creating the world, because I do think that we continue to perpetuate it. So long as I'm
Right.
perpetuating it, I'm responsible for
Oh,
creating the
yeah.
world, because the world is changing every decade. So I hear the point that you're not responsible for building the
The foundation.
the foundation of it, right? The groundwork, all that. But it would not be here and look the same
Yeah.
if the last 20, 30 years, my friends, my peers, Hank included, when you had blind spots, but if you didn't, and every single day we did things differently, it would be a different world.
Right.
So with my boys, I'm like, I don't want to hear the excuse of that you didn't create this world. Yes, you are. Unless you're doing something different. You're creating the culture in your friends. You're creating the culture in your club over here, in your basketball team, at school. Every little world is a microcosm of the bigger world.
But
so
isn't-
you are a part
right.
of creating it.
But isn't that more accountable? Like you're accountable to
Agreed.
trying to change it, right? You're not responsible for creating it. You're responsible for changing it, right? Well, would that be the kind of the
Sure,
difference
I
there?
accept that. Yeah, that we're responsible for changing it, but we are perpetuating it, which means creating it
Yeah.
as well, unless we are changing
Yeah, I guess I like that framing, because I and again, I love that you're making us think about all these things. I've never thought about it as like as a recovery, from sexism, recovering from these sort of old ingrained ways of living, but I do think that there's a backlash right now because there's a lot of politicians who are banning books and banning certain curriculum that's anti-racist, that's anti-sexist, because they're saying these kids feel guilty. These kids are feeling shame. And maybe it comes back to the difference between shame and guilt. Maybe we can teach them how to feel, maybe guilt but not shame, right? Not because if you start with you're a bad person and people don't want, that's not an invitation. And I think I'm talking also more about children here, right? Like how do you get children excited about social change as opposed to feel bad for it? You know, does any of that make sense?
Sure.
Makes more than sense.
Yeah,
I really wrestle with this every day. I mean, I give this a lot of thought. And it takes practice, you know. There are not easy answers to this. And I do talk to kids. I went to my son's school, in fact, and gave a talk about my Apu journey, as I call it. And I start off with, okay, everybody, this is a bunch of, I guess it was 5th through 8th graders and a lot of parents and teachers. So I'm going to start off by saying this. No one here is bad because they're white, okay? Let's just start right there. Because especially you mentioned a backlash, there's a New York City private school thing going on now where there's like a lot of pushback. And I'm tired of being told I'm bad because I'm white. I'm tired of my kids being told they're bad because they're white. I'm not so sure that's what they're being told, but I guess that's what the message is coming through. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I want to start by disarming that. And a lot of how I feel I'm valuable in this conversation is I really do remember what it's like to have those thoughts. It wasn't that long ago for me. I think the best way to talk about it is to give my own example. You know, I talk about, you know, what I did discover about Apu. I get specific about. I was raised in a culture where racial humor was just humor. That was just one of the flavors of comedy. You know, if you saw a stand-up, he would talk about the difference between New York and L.A. and cats versus dogs, and he would do some racial stuff, and then you have your couple of drinks, you go home, right? Don Rickles, tremendous example. Now, I grew up idolizing Peter Sellers. If you don't know who that is.
Of course, Pink Panther.
Right. And so he did their silly French voices, Inspector Clouseau.
Does your dog bite? Yep.
Does your dog bite? Exactly.
And he was Dr. Strangelove in the great Kubrick film, silly German accent.
He also did a movie in the 60s with Blake Edwards called The Party, where he played an Indian guy named Harundi V. Bakshi. And a very, as silly as Clouseau, I'm not going to do the accent, as silly as Clouseau and genius as as Strangelove was, he did a similar thing with the Indian accent there. He was in brownface for this movie. And I found it, now to my 15-year-old worshiping of a vocal genius like that and a great actor and comedian, I was aspiring to be that. I made no difference as a white kid in Queens between Clouseau and Strangelove and Harundi Bakshi. They were all just brilliant Peter Sellers characters to me, even with him being in brownface. So when I'm at the microphone, not that long later, maybe 23 years old, and a producer says to me, "Hey, can you do an Indian accent?" Peter Sellers pops into my mind, and my impression of Peter Sellers comes out. Okay. And I mean, talk about groundwater, right? Talk about what got in there without any other thought, as what we're told is fine and acceptable and very, very funny. And out it came through me. Well, what I didn't realize, ironically, was that when Peter Sellers did that voice at the time, Indian people were very upset by it. Very upset. It was a very marginalizing, silly portrayal. In fact, further irony, the character of Apu is named after films called the Apu Trilogy, Indian films called the Apu Trilogy, made by a brilliant Indian director back from that time in the 50s and 60s called Sanjit Ray. Peter Sellers and Sanjit Ray were very good friends. They were working on a project together. And when Sanjit Ray had no idea that Peter Sellers was doing this movie, when the movie came out, Sanjit Ray was so upset and like personally offended and couldn't believe that Peter Sellers just like blew his people up, just trashed his people essentially with what is a very funny portrayal, by the way. It's somewhat Apu. It's like this funny and lovingly done and well-intended, but very insulting on a bottom line level. So, and that's what Apu's named after. And that's the history of all that. So I was in fact perpetuating a stereotype and doing the harm. And as you said earlier about the whole avoidance, right, Jamie? So once I'm aware of the whole, now it's on me to step around it. You know, I don't vilify myself for my first 25 years of that character. I did the best with the tools I had. I really didn't know. And that's why I forgive my mom and dad too for never owning their they didn't know. They didn't realize. They did the best they could with the tools they had. It wasn't good enough in many ways, and I suffered because of what they didn't know. So I can't think of a better way to describe it without that example. And then I say to folks, whether they're young or old, now I know some of this is unrelatable because most of you probably don't do the voice of Apu on The Simpsons, but do you have a similar, where in your life did you not consider some of the impact of stuff that you take for granted? And we go into a lot of what those examples might be in our seminars, on social, political, economic levels, like where might you be in all that? And we try to bring people in, like, how is this hitting you? You there. Yes, sir. You, sir. How does this, you feel pushback on this? Do you accept it? Do you see yourself in it? Do you feel like it's true, but doesn't relate to you? Where are you in it all? We call it giving your accurate location, which requires a safe environment.
Yeah, the difference between holding yourself accountable and like beating yourself up, right? People want to think of themselves as good people, and so that's one barrier to change. But then I think the other barrier is like, oh, I'm a horrible person. Oh my God, I'm and living in that shame. And actually, both are bad.
They're not productive.
Yes,
There is a healthy sense of shame, I believe, enough where you feel like I never am going to do that again.
Yeah.
I feel so disgusted with my act, for me in my case, in my life, in my history, where I was unfaithful and blew up my marriage because of my and those around me, and it hurt friends of the family because of the, you set one thing on fire, it sets a whole bunch of houses in close proximity to that one house that you caught on fire. I feel shame that I was the cause of that destruction. I should have known better. But at the same time, the shame that keeps you stuck where you feel less than as a human and that you can't keep moving and get out of it, that's dangerous, of course, and that's not healthy. But I do think there's a healthy sense of it that propels us to be better, This is what I think exactly what our young boys need.
Yeah.
Is these types of conversations, all people, so that your son, my sons, the world, our listeners, can just be comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
We don't have to have all the answers. We're searching for the answers. I love that you're using blind spots, and I appreciate it in this context. I have blind spots as well. I know that I have used them as I get a little bit more wise, sometimes as an excuse. It's kind of like, and again, Hank, forgive me because I'm not saying this about you, but it's a term that I have heard many people use almost as it's like a woke statement. I had blind spots.
Well, also, can I point out it's also if we're going to, in the spirit of this conversation, it's also the disability community does not, wants us to come up with a better word.
Aside from, aside from people that are actually blind, I know that have that feeling, but.
I didn't consider that.
I know.
There's always more.
There's always more.
more
Now,
to learn.
I personally don't have an issue with
Now
that.
I have a blind spot around the term blind.
I know. I have no argument about that one because I think blind, the definition of blind does mean you can't see.
Well, some blind people can see. Anyway.
But I just mean blind. I'm not referencing blind people. I'm talking
but
about
it's like a
term.
negative, right? Anyway, we can.
Blind means to me can't see. That's all it means. So I have spots I can't see. But in any case, I'm okay. I don't mean to argue with you.
It's okay. We
can
can deep dive on it later.
But
I hear on that, Jamie. But but just one thing. It's look. I'm speaking personally. They really were.
No, I believe
I was really clueless.
But let me ask you, Hank.
I agree with you. Once you're clueful, you are accountable.
But here's the other question to it. Yes, and this is not directed at you again. But we can say I was clueless. The next question is, should you have been clueless? How could you
exactly right?
How could you have not seen, as a man in the world, that women on your shows have less privilege than you? How could you not see that? How could I not see that? How could we not see race when it's there? I think it's we had blind spots, but it's because we also chose to not look in the direction where the light was, because it did not benefit us, or because it was I don't want to do that. So yes, we had blind because we didn't choose to open up the book and read the fucking definition.
Well, it's not that we were blind. We were closing our eyes. Maybe that.
I'll be even more damning at it. I was benefiting.
Right.
Correct. So why would I bother to?
That's
I'm not.
It. Yeah.
So that's beyond
it.
that statement right there you just said is including blind spots.
Right.
Forgive the term, but we've used it, so I'm going to use it for the moment. We've had spots where we couldn't see. Still didn't use the term because I'm aware of it.
It's working.
And also chose to not look at it.
Right.
100%. It
Yeah.
doesn't take me off the hook.
Yeah.
What do they say? You know, ignorance is not a defense, right? Ignorance of the law is not a
Yeah, right.
defense,
That's right.
I
Right,
mean,
right.
not. But you know, there's an interesting story that I have that speaks to this exact thing. I think early on in all this, as I was just one of the conversations, many conversations I had, there was this white woman who my wife was uh, meditation partners with in a class called White Awake, about using meditation to be more as a tool to be more mindful in this area of race in society, mindfulness in society. Okay. And I had a lot of conversations with her, and she was hipping me to my white privilege, my relative advantage, you know, things that she had made me aware of an article called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, which is a wonderful
Great
article,
one.
very iconic one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know this one, yeah. Lists 37 ways that white people usually don't consider that they are advantaged. A couple that stuck out to me were as an actor, I've moved everywhere. I must have moved 60 times in my life. I never worried about the neighborhood I'd be in. Would I be accepted or not? Would it be safe? That's a very white person take for granted thing, you know. I never worry when my son enters any new environment, school or otherwise, he's going to have a problem because of the color of his skin. I don't worry about it.
Right.
These are things that people of color do worry about, and there's 35 others that are listed in this article. So she's just making me aware of all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of wrapping my brain around it because it took some wrapping my brain. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then she said, now, do you see how, if that's racism, let's call it racism, do you see that has hurt you? I was like, no. Haven't I been benefiting from it? I'm just wrapping my brain around, it was good for me. How was it bad for me? And she kind of looked at me very sweetly and said, well, if you're ignoring all that, aren't you lacking compassion? I was like, oh, yeah. Didn't think of that. And that, you know, as we say sometimes in program, right, the 1,000-mile journey from the head to the heart,
Yeah.
that registered on me intellectually in that moment. That sounds true and accurate. But it took me a couple of years to have that really settle in to my heart. Like, man, I'm kind of numb and uncaring in a lot of ways. And to speaking to what you said, Jamie, like, which enabled me to not think about impact of race or characters or think about how women have it harder than I do in the workplace and elsewhere or anything. I'm like this kind of numb, competitive being, you know, who, and it serves you if you're going to compete a lot.
Yeah. I cannot accept anymore that we don't see things.
Mm-hmm.
I accept that I had so many spots that I could, places that I didn't see. I do know that, which is why I'm a little compassionate on myself. I am less compassionate in a generation now where there's lights everywhere. There are people raising flags, waving the flags everywhere. You have to deliberately not look. So blind spots to me don't work. That's something that our generation can use. A lot less today. So I'm a compassionate. I get it. It's because even if the parents aren't giving it to our kids, it's around. You can't go to school. You can't walk down the street anymore and not see something if they follow TikTok or anything and not see someone waving a flag to be aware of something.
Yeah.
So when they say to me, I didn't know any better, I'm like, yeah, you chose not to know any better. You're listening to the Man Enough Podcast. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back to the Man Enough Podcast. Let's talk about all this stuff. Because of this stuff, you now want to do better in the world and you want to do differently. So you have and are partnered with people that have an organization.
The Human Solidarity Project, the Soul Focus Group is what existed. I came in and formed the nonprofit arm called the Human Solidarity Project. And Essentially, I found their approach to, we don't like to call it anti-racist because we feel that's not covering it. The way they describe it is they got really good over many decades at fighting racism and not very good at ending it, not very good at finding solutions. So it's more solution-based and inclusive, and human solidarity is the goal. What do you create as opposed to what are you trying to tear down? I found that approach so loving and so, recovery-based and so connected that I wanted people who couldn't afford it. I mean, these guys get good fees to go do it, as well they should. But if folks can afford it, whatever the monetary block might be, I want to supply money for that to reach whoever was seeking it. And then they said, well, if you're going to do that, you can't just throw money at us. You've got to join us and learn to be a facilitator as well and be able to share your story and have that be part of what we're doing. And that's what I did.
What I love is like everything you've shared today, all of the wisdom and learnings wouldn't have happened, if you had, I mean, they happened because of a mistake, right? And something that you decided to, I think there's a version of your life where you stayed, had the first response, and that would have been the second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth response, right? You would just continue to sort of build that armor and resist, the change. And I think it's a really important thing to highlight, right? That these moments are hard. I'm sure it was maybe the hardest moment of your life.
It was hard.
Yes.
It was a hard
Dark.
few years.
Yes. And look at the light that can happen if you're willing to walk through that darkness.
Early on, a bunch of years ago, there was an opportunity to change the voice. Like they were going to hire an Indian actor to do the voice, which I was all for. To be on full disclosure, not to do the right thing. I was starting to get heat, and I just didn't want the heat. You know what I mean? And so they were going to do that. And then in the end, they did not do that for a variety of reasons. And I often look back at that like, wow, if we had just changed the voice, and this was way before the documentary ever came out. I think if we had changed the voice back then, we would have avoided a lot of the controversy, maybe even short. And on the one hand, believe me, there were many, many days where I would have preferred that. It was hard. I'm not a suicidal guy, but there were, many days where I was like, man, I would even say to myself, I'm not a suicidal guy, but I'd rather not go through this day I'm about to face today. I'd really rather not. But I look back at that. Like if I could go back in time, would I do that? And as hard as all those, knowing that I still have to go through those hard years, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't have gotten here. I wouldn't have learned what I learned. I would have connected with Dustin and Madi and them, who are like my brothers now. And I wouldn't have been in a position to share this work with people and be of service in this way. I'm so glad that I was actually sober from alcohol before all this happened.
Right.
Because I swear, although the thing itself, one sip of wine one night when I was angry or hurt or feeling sorry for myself over this, I'm sure I would have tweeted out something that would have made things a lot worse for myself. And other people too, that kind of angry, defensive, like you were talking about, doubling down, tripling down.
Wow.
And so I can't even, for a lot of reasons, I can't separate my, substance recovery from this kind of recovery.
Wow.
They're intertwined,
Thank goodness that you were sober. Well, for a lot of reasons, but yeah, that definitely would have, I'm sure, added so much to it. And look at you now. I think that those things, those days that you spoke of, and something that I very much believe in, and based on a quote from Abdu'l-Baha that I focus on is, if you're going to travel on a ship, you want to travel on a ship with a captain that's been through the worst storms, because you know that they've learned how to navigate them. And you don't want to fly in a plane with a pilot that, has never been through a windstorm or a thunderstorm. You want someone who's had to navigate the trials and tribulations of those things. Likewise, I think anyone who's been through stuff and have succeeded in getting through it and having the perseverance, the wherewithal, the accountability, the skill set is one, the faith to get through those things are the ones that I want to ride with. I want to walk with those people. So you've been through some stuff, and you face those things. And now I think you're able to offer humanity perspective that you never would have otherwise.
Yeah, and we have a funny slogan about that in Al-Anon recovery, which is God doesn't give me anything I can't handle. It's just that sometimes I wish he didn't have so much faith in me.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. How
Such a good
beautiful.
one.
Should we bring Dustin he's gonna join along with you, right?
Here, Dustin, come on in. This is Dustin Washington.
How you doing, Dustin?
Good. How are you?
Oh, we're good. So you're partnered up with Hank there, huh?
I am.
Tell us about yourself. What are you doing?
That's a big question. In terms of why we're here today, we work together with the Soul Focus Group and the Human Solidarity Project. The truth is our relationship goes much deeper than that. As Hank talks about recovery, I'm also a recovery person. Hank is my sponsor in adult children of alcoholics. And so we spend a lot of time, as Hank introduced to you the concept of groundwater in terms of the work we do around race and racism and oppression. But really, groundwater is the essence of all the healing work we do. And for us, it's what we found to be the missing component in the conversation around race and racism, the missing component and what's going to move us forward to really creating solutions. As we keep having these conversations from a conscious-minded place, while we're having some good analysis around the problem of race and racism, if you look at, outcomes across every system that exists in our country, we could see those outcomes getting worse because we haven't dealt with what's in the groundwater, subconscious programming of well-intentioned people, or sometimes, not well-intentioned people.
Oh, man, well articulated.
Yeah.
You're dedicated to this work, clearly.
Yeah.
I am. I'm dedicated to this work, not just the work around race and racism, but what underlies everything we're doing is we're dedicated to creating a new world of love and human connection. That's what really propels us. So racism is, definitely a barrier to us being able to be in authentic connection. One of the things we were talking about at dinner last night, sitting in a restaurant, looking around at every other table, there wasn't another table where there was a white man and a black man sitting together. And so what racism has done is created this artificial barrier that now lives in our subconscious programming that keeps us from having the level of authentic human connection that we ought to be able to have, that allows us to come together to solve problems that we should have solved a long time ago as a human family.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I mean, I love, again, the language of recovery. And Hank, you spoke to this of growing up in a dysfunctional environment that's, often very much at the root of a lot of recovery programs. Growing up in a racist society is, in a way, growing up within dysfunction. I'm curious, how does racism prevent friendships between white men and black men, or, men of color and white men? Because look at what you've done with one friendship and sort of the incredible love that you've injected in the world and how many people you've helped. So for people who are listening, thinking about that example at dinner, where we don't have enough of those friendships. What are men sort of losing, by not having those close, intimate friendships across racial lines, if you want to call it that way? I don't know if that's the right term.
That's a really, really good question. Liz, I would start off by saying that first and foremost, racism limits us from having the healthy relationship with ourselves. Because we get a host of messages from a very young age that are racialized messages that are in fact not true about our worth, our value, our place of belonging, who we are in this world, what we're capable of in this world, that really limits us being our authentic, natural expression. So that's number one. If I have an unhealthy relationship with myself, I'm not going to be able to engage with someone even of my own race in a healthy relationship. Right. And, of course, we know that race in and of itself is a lie because it was something that was socially and politically constructed. Right. So in and of itself, defining myself by a race or defining another human being by a race in and of itself is dishonest. On its face, even though we know we live very much in a racialized world.
Which we do a deep dive in the seminars, by the way. If that doesn't make sense to some people, it can be a daunting concept at first, but that is the truth, and we can back it up. But anyway.
Yes, sir. I love that you guys are doing this work.
It's awesome.
I love that you guys are doing it together. I know that there's other partners as well and people involved in it. But right now on screen, I got a white man and a black man who are talking about how to heal the world, an organization that's dealing with race. We also talked about gender and, how the ill effects on the humanity that has and how we can be better as men. It makes me proud to be a man when I see other men look like me. You both look like me because I got a white mother and a black daddy, so you both look like me. It makes me proud to be a man in those moments, you know, and I don't want to say ashamed in the way that we talk about shamed, but there are times when I'm just ashamed of men who are continuing to look away at the light. And I appreciate the two of you who are looking at the light and trying to be better and then help others to be better.
Can I just say to what you're saying around men, because I think this is really important,
Please.
that we can't have the holistic conversation around race and racism without talking about the impact on gender masculinity and what has been done to us as men that affects how we show up. For us to have the healthiest conversation around creating a new world based in love, we've got to be able to dig deep. I feel men hungry for this, but you know, the way in which we're having so many conversations across our society is just pointing the finger, using shame, like you said, not being vulnerable enough to allow other people to really open up and really put the pain that they're feeling on the table, because all of us are feeling. You can't grow up in this society, this dysfunctional society, Liz, like you just talked about, without feeling all this stuff.
That's
And we just have to move away from wanting to blame or judge or, you know, cancel anybody else and really create a space where we can just be vulnerable and real.
Love, love, love. Beautiful.
Wow,
Liz, come on
we
now.
are so happy. This is so great.
We're going
We
to
could
move into our rap section.
Yeah. Last question. What does it mean for you to be man enough?
Be present. Be fully present. Warm. Open.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I would say to be centered within myself, all of who I am, and allow myself and others to experience all of who I am.
Wow.
Yes.
Damn.
This is why we do this show.
Yeah.
This is why, so we can have these conversations and talk to people like y'all. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Justin, I'm so glad you joined
Thank you.
the tail
Thank
end
you.
of this. And Hank, honestly, really, been a fan of yours, but the truth is I don't give a shit about your accolades. I don't care about all that stuff. You know what I mean? When you die and when we're all sitting around and talking about you, it ain't going to be because you got this many Emmys and this and all the work that you did in the acting skill. It's going to be like, what did he mean to the world and how did he move it? What did he do for his boy? And what did he do for Dustin and those around? And I know now, spending time with you, like, this is a dude I'd walk down the street with and want to talk to and hang out with. So thanks for showing us and those that listen to us your spirit and your heart.
Thank you so much. Right back at you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I really want to get this word out there. It's an important conversation. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Liz,
Thank
come
you.
on now.
Yeah, this is, I think we've talked, we talk about a lot of things and it can feel like we're always talking about the same thing. This was like a brand new, there was so many brand new things and brand new ways of like new POVs, I think, on a conversation that is very important. So thank you so much.
Thank you both.
If you like what you've heard, you should follow us and subscribe to our podcast.
Where can they find us?
They can find us at manenough.com/podcast or wherever they get their podcasts.
And specifically go to YouTube so that you can watch it. Until the next time, Justin says hello, wishes he was here. Hank, Dustin, thank you again so much for joining us. Liz, I love and adore you and learn so much from you all the time.
Same. I really love this.
We're going to see everybody next time.
Yeah, see you soon.
All right. Until then, I'm Jamie Heath.
I'm Liz Plank.
And this is
Man Enough.
Thank you for listening to the Man Enough podcast, produced by Wayfair Studios and presented by Procter & Gamble, in partnership with Cadence 13 and Odyssey Company. Hosted by Justin Baldoni, Liz Plank, and me, Jamie Heath. If you like what you heard, please follow us and tune in weekly as we undefine masculinity and learn in real time. Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and Tara Malhotra Feinberg from Wayfair Studios, Mark Pritchard and Anna Saalfeld from Procter & Gamble, and Chris Corcoran from Cadence 13 are our executive producers. Kayla Nicholson is our producer. Ashmi Elizabeth Dang is head of marketing, and Susie Landers O'Connell is our lead editor. Thanks for listening.